Guys, so I just thought I'd give you some wisdom as far as Sunfire Castle is concerned. Okay, so you see this little red box? Yeah, anybody in that area at before 11, right? So before 12, obviously at 11, what's going to happen is a storm's going to happen, and this guy's going to get booted off into the ether, and he won't be able to boot back in for quite a while. So you don't want to do that. You want to wait until the castle event starts at 12 to boot up close to it. The next thing you want to know is, okay, the turrets themselves, right? You can send one march, so you can either go straight for the castle if you're the strongest player in the alliance and knock out the Phaethon mercenaries in the middle, right? And then you basically need to hold this for at least 4 hours straight, or to whoever holds it the longest in 8 hours. Okay. The main thing is the strategy is the turrets are kind of the key to casualty rates. Now, if you're not sure what I mean by this, what I'm saying is basically if you don't take over a turret and they hit you, it's going to do a casualty rate of 2%. Obviously, 1, 2, 3, 4, you're going to get a little over 8%. And that's a stupid amount of casualties for anybody that's sitting in here with T9, T10 that will tick off quite fast. So you'll lose a stupid amount of troops very, very quickly. So you want to make sure you get those turrets. Now, the problem is, obviously, is most people can, take over the Sunfire Castle, but can they maintain it? And the trick to that is you've got to own not only the castle, but the turrets. And so a lot of the time, what will end up happening is very few alliances in the beginning, anyway, are going to be able to do all of that all at once. So what they recommend you do is basically these here are going to rotate every 5 or so minutes. And what you want to do is, so basically the refresh rate on these, what you do is try to refresh that timer so that way you don't have yourself having a gigantic casualty rate. Now, strategy-wise, how do you go about Sunfire Castle is really going to be dependent on what you want to use. But typically what people like to do is, once you take it over, right, then you're going to go play defense. You're going to play hardball. So you're going to be using heroes like Sergei. You're going to be using heroes like Patrick when you own it. Now, if you don't own it, what you'll typically do is you'll be throwing heroes at them like Geronimo, Molly, and you'll be ultimately trying to do damage. And, heroes even like Jesse, right? But the thing is when you're doing this, you're kind of having to do a lot of back and forth trying to take over the castle. And then once you've got the castle, it's just a matter of maintaining that position and holding it and keeping it. And so a lot of the time, as far as at least from what I know, right, is if you are struggling with Sunfire Castle, I think one of the strategies you can kind of employ here is, if assuming that you're willing to team up with another alliance, what you'll do is you'll typically have one alliance take over the castle, and then another alliance handle the turrets. And then what you'll do is you'll basically keep those turrets at bay and hopefully maintain the loss ratio enough that you're not getting completely mollywopped by the freaking the casualty rate, and that's holding and maintaining it, and so that way eventually you will have that castle by the end of the 4 hours. Otherwise, if you end up in a situation where you're almost neck and neck with each other, then really about the only thing I think you can do in this instance is to make their life a living hell. So if they've got the castle, then basically knock out all the turrets and put a ton of pressure on those guys until the last hour, and then hit the castle, because you're maximizing the amount of damage that those guys are going to have to pay up and recover from every single time. Not to mention, if you can knock them out of the castle, then you've not only weakened them over casualties, but then you've added more on top of that, and so in a lot of ways, at least with Sunfire, you've got to be kind of weary of these turrets because if you're not careful, it very quickly adds up. It's a kind of a game of who has more troops. I've seen just as many people. What they'll do is they'll have people that are, so like, for example, you'll know that X, Y, and Z is going to be sitting here, and you're going to basically wait until, okay, he's empty, and then smack him so you can knock him out. And that's not a bad strategy. It's just dangerous, because if you don't know what you're hitting, you're going to wind up, end up losing a ton of troops doing that, so I don't recommend doing that, but I've seen people do it. But ultimately, that's what you need to know as far as Sunfire is concerned, and hopefully you guys are ready and prepared for this event that's coming up here real soon here. State 467.